It's really a brilliant idea. I mean, communism, though it doesn't actually work as an economic system, it works as a ideology for power. And so why not apply it to other things? As you were showing how it transposes Marxism on race, I was thinking of feminism, because I think certain forms of feminism could be called gender Marxism. All the oppressors are male. All the, the proletariat, the analogy here for the working class would be women. And, you have to be a male feminist. You have to renounce your toxic masculinity. So all the language, you just transpose it, and it just really clicks over, because I think it would be hard to appeal to wide swaths of the Western world on communist economics, because so many people have such material comfort these days. But if you can get them agitated over gender or race, or these days transgenderism, I guess you can motivate them, pit them against each other, and use it to destroy the establishment. That's really the purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Your analysis there of feminism or gender studies, whichever one you want to pick, there's, race Marxism and critical race theory, gender and sex Marxism and feminism and gender studies, queer theory, sexuality Marxism. We just don't use those terms because they've hidden them. I mean, even the term critical race theory, just to try to drag back for 1 second, critical race theory is, according to Kimberly Crenshaw, who wrote it, this is an example of how they hide what they're doing in different words, is a critical theory of race. She says we were critical theorists who were interested in racial justice and racial justice advocates who were doing critical theory, so the name was natural. That's how she came up with the name critical race theory. But the name critical theory is actually a packaging up of something that other scholars have referred to as critical Marxism or Western Marxism. So you call it critical theory as the thing that drives it, and people don't detect that it's Marxist. And that arose out of a thing that's called the Institute for Social Research, from Goethe University in Frankfurt, Germany, the so-called Frankfurt School. But the original name of that was the Institute for Marxism, but its funders, Felix Weil in particular, said, well, that would be a little too on the nose, so let's not call it the Institute for Marxism, let's call it something else and hide the ball. And this actually goes all the way back to Karl Marx. You talk about this as an ideology. It's actually more of a religion. In the original title of the Communist Manifesto, most people don't know this, and Friedrich Engels is the one who said, don't do that, Karl, was the Confession of Communist Faith by Karl Marx. And so this hiding the nature of what they're actually creating is the essence of how they are able to get it to be insinuated into institutions and into society and to agitate a society to its own downfall and for their own ability to seize power.
I got to imagine it's tough to talk about these things. I mean, you're trying to defog things. You're trying to bring clarity, and you're right. Even the word theory is such it could mean anything, but Marxism is very specific. Better get rid of the word Marxism and put in a generic neutral word. But if you're a male taking on gender Marxism, is tough. You'll be called a misogynist. If you're white taking on critical race theory or race Marxism, you'll probably be called racist. I can imagine it's tough because you're taking on the blueprints, you're taking on the Rosetta Stone, like the universal translator to understand what's going on. Not only do they hate you because you're against them, but they hate you because you're exposing them and teaching people how to think critically about them. I would imagine they would regard you as a threat. What kind of pushback have you received for your book, Race Marxism?
Well, I mean, Jacobin magazine just published a review of it. If we want to use the word review pretty loosely, they say that I don't say anything at all, and that I don't understand what I'm talking about, and that it's a very strange and very bad book. That was the summary. It's kind of an interesting thing because I tweeted a few weeks ago, I put on Twitter that one of my operational goals right now is to shift the conversation to where it's no longer an argument about is critical race theory Marxist or not, to shift it to is Marxism bad, or why is Marxism bad? And that's actually what the review that this guy in Jacobin magazine wrote. His name's Matt McManus, if you want to look him up. He actually wrote that I never give an argument for why critical race theory is bad. I just call it Marxism. And so I'm trying to move the conversation in that direction because I think we understand. But the kind of pushback that I get is still mostly academic. I occasionally have protesters show up. I did a talk in Delaware last November, and a young man showed up and burned an American flag. And I went out to talk to him, and he said, well, there's a Nazi in there named James Lindsay. And I said, okay, who's that? I've never heard of him. And then he said he's a Nazi. He doesn't want to teach history, doesn't want to teach about slavery. He hates critical race theory. And I said, well, what's critical race theory? And he said, it's teaching history. And it's obviously very misinformed young man. I asked him, and he's 17 years old, so I didn't want to mess with him too much. But, so he burns a flag outside. I've had Antifa showed up to one of my talks in Wisconsin. The police kept them duly at bay. I've had protesters show up to a few things. Mostly, though, it's been okay, and just kind of the online harassment one comes to expect these days. But when I speak at universities so far, more or less universally, there's been a couple of small exceptions, have to speak off campus because it's too risky to bring a voice from my perspective or conservative in general on campus in many cases.
You said so many things, so I want to take on a few. The first is I myself have had that experience of meeting a protester and being told, I'm here to protest Ezra Levant. And I had to keep my face, like I had a camera with me. I'm going to see if I can dig up that clip and we'll add it to the interview because I managed not to giggle or to give anything away. And then I started talking about what she thought about Ezra Levant and what she would say to Ezra Levant if she ever met him. I did enjoy that, but she was certainly sure that she didn't like that Ezra Levant character.
No, thank you.
You don't want to talk at a rally?
Not to the sun.
How come you don't want to talk to the sun?
Well, because you know why.
Why?
No, thank you.
Are we more critical than other media?
No, thank you.
Will you talk to other reporters?
Yeah.
Is there any other reporter you won't talk to besides the Sun?
No.
Is it because I'm critical of the Line 9 protesters?
It's because Ezra,
And what do you think of Ezra?
well, he's connected with ethical oil, unethical oil.
And if you had one message to say to Ezra, what would it be?
No comment.
Do you think Ezra's going to show up today?
I have no idea. No idea.
What do you think Ezra looks like? Do you think he's ugly?
Does that matter what his appearance looks like?
He thinks he's ugly.
Well, then.
He's got a low body self-image.
Well, that's his issue.
Any last messages for Ezra if I see him?
No.
No? Okay, nice to meet you.
It's like the protester. It's like the protester equivalent of can you find Ukraine on a map that they're going around and doing right now.
That's exactly right.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.